Within 3 months of office, this Labour government are doing irreversible, lasting damage to this country, damage that will be felt in decades to come. Take the bragging of proudly closing the last of the coal mines with nothing yet in place to take up the slack. Thousands are now out of work as a result, with no immediate job replacement. Why do that? The green agenda, meaning we will lose our ability to create our very own virgin steel, which is far superior, instead relying on electric arc furnaces that can only deal with reclaimed steel, meaning we'll have to import it from China to meet our needs to build ugly and, in my view, dangerous pylons, solar panels and wind turbines. We won't be able to make them in the UK. Rather, we'll be shipping everything from places like China and India. Think of the carbon for all of that. Oh, we don't need to. We've offset it. What a scam. We will use swathes of land we can't afford to lose, to onshore wind and solar, damaging for both the environment, the wildlife and, of course, our own food supplies. We're going to be leading the way in carbon capture. What a scam. So we'll have high-pressure carbon stored under the seabed next to oil and gas fields run by the oil and gas companies.
This is such a hugely exciting moment in the future of British industry because, as Ed has already pointed out, it is a landmark week in our national story because this week we saw the end of coal. The end of coal, the power that built this country for many years. And now, as we see the end of coal, we see the new future on our horizon with carbon capture and storage. The largest programme in this new and vital industry anywhere in the world. That is incredible.
Great. We can brag about being the first fools. Sounds like a recipe for one ginormous explosion that would destroy the planet. The other day, the government handed back the Chagos Islands as, I suspect, a gesture of guilt for empire, a move initiated by James Cleverly, originally rejected by David Cameron, and finally implemented by possibly the world's worst diplomat of all time, David Lammy, who will surely go down as the worst Home Secretary ever. Fancy calling the potential leader of the free world, who you may have to deal with, a neo-Nazi sociopath. Way to go, David. I suspect you're hoping that you'll never have to speak or confront Donald Trump to apologise for those ridiculous words. How embarrassing. I've never called anybody that, ever. Have you? And out loud. He's a public figure. It's abusive language and the claims are totally unfounded. Where are his standards? And they are now going to lease the island for an eye-watering sum. The action has reignited the argument over the Falklands and other British territories. You couldn't make it up. This under a party and a leader who stood on the plinth of integrity. The party set their stall out as holier than thou, a stall letting off their very own rogue landlord, Jazz Athwell, a stall where the front many have pocketed freebies and in the latest a long list of embarrassing hypocritical incidents, they're now selling croissants. They need to be held to account for, in my view, their woeful mismanagement of this country, a country that, if we're not careful, will be destroyed by their collective greed. And just to correct that, David Lammy is the did I say Foreign Secretary? Did I say Home Secretary? Which one did I say? He's the Foreign Secretary. Apologies if I had said Home Secretary. But before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you trust Labour not to give away more territory? Well, the Prime Minister has already given away the Chagos Islands and has failed to rule out handing away the Falklands and Gibraltar. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you trust Labour not to give away more territory? And for the Pulse, I'll be speaking with pharmacist Thorin Govind about the new COVID variant sweeping through the UK, with GPs warning that it's wiping people out. We'll get to the bottom of the reality of this version of the disease. Stay tuned, that is coming up this hour. As ever, post me your comments, send me your thoughts. gbnews.com/you'll say. Well, I'm joined now by former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. Paul, you heard what I had to say. I did correct my little slight error there, but the sentiment is still the same. Where do you stand with all of that?
Well, I was thinking, come on, Nana, get off the fence. Why don't you tell us what you really think? I mean, that was quite the broad side. But if we unpack it a little bit, the carbon capture announcement is over 25 years, and it will create some really good quality jobs for people in Merseyside and Teesside, give some young people apprenticeships, and move us towards a greener economy. I don't mourn the loss of the last coal mine. I don't think we should be digging up coal anymore. It is a redundant technology, and you can't complain about ending the coal mines and then also complain about solar and onshore wind, because we are going to have to move to those renewables.
Well, I'm complaining about it because
and also safeguard the planet.
Well, I'm complaining about it because, of course, in order to make certain things, and I presume especially pylons and things like that, you're probably going to need pretty strong steel. We won't be able to make our own virgin steel. We're not there at the point where we can get rid of these things. Surely you would replace it when you have something already that can do the thing that it did. I mean, there's nobody saying that you shouldn't do that, but take time.
It is a transition, but we need to get on with it because, the climate crisis is real. But also, people need homes to live in. So we are going to need pylons, and it is going to be the case that, bits of green belt are going to be dug up and bits of grey belt are going to be used. And we're going to have to repurpose bits of cities as well, because there's a massive housing crisis and young people just can't get on the housing ladder. So we're going to have to build houses, and then we're going to have electricity going into those houses, and it's going to have to be pylons that carry it. So
the
we are going to see this kind of
being
change in our
built.
country.
But Paul, the pylons are not specifically being built for new homes. They're being built so that we can support things like EVs and other electric things, and also to harness the energy from the wind farms. That's why they're really being built. It's not necessarily because of people don't have anywhere to live. It's to harness the energy that we're currently wasting with pylons. And pylons are a very old technology.
Well, we're going to have to grow the economy, and we're going to have to grow our towns and cities, and we're going to have to supply them with electricity. So that's what the pylons are for. And we need growth in the economy too. I mean, this government's entire mission is to get the fastest growth in the G7. That's a huge ask, and it's going to need all of us to work in new industries. It's going to need people in every part of the country to be productive, to get more jobs and apprenticeships into the economy. And that's going to have to be fueled and powered. And I don't want it fueled and powered by coal and oil. I want it fueled and powered by solar and wind, and that's the way forward, surely.
But in the meantime, the things that we can't do, we are going to China and places like that for them to do it, so we can offset our carbon, so we can brag about the fact that we are not using much carbon, which isn't really true. Wouldn't it be better for us to just carry on making those things here, because there's a lot of carbon transporting them as well, until we are already set up for this new age of energy production? Surely that makes more sense. Currently, in those steel-making areas, thousands of people, Port Talbot, they've been put out of work. What are they going to do?
I agree with that to some extent. I think if we are going to be using these enormous wind turbines, for example, they should be manufactured in the UK. I don't think we should be necessarily importing those. But in the meantime, until we have the ability to do that, we do need to get on with our transition and to meet our climate targets. So I don't want us to be reliant on other countries for our energy, and particularly not Russia, which, of course, historically we've been reliant on for the gas.
But so won't we be holding to China, though? Won't we now be holding to China for steel and other countries that produce it? Yes, we'll be holding, we're maybe no longer, we are actually still using Russian gas, oil and gas, but it's coming through a different thing, so we can say that it's not coming from there. But ultimately, will we not be beholden to China? So we've got rid of steel and gas, but now we'll be requiring to get steel from a foreign provider.
Well, I concede that point. I think we do need to up our own game and to have more manufacturing in this country. But that is going to take time. I mean, the government's only 100 days old. This is a 10-year programme at least. And it is going to have to be something that we have to go through a transition. So that's what today's or yesterday's announcements are all about in terms of the carbon capture technology. It's an imperfect technology, and it's contested. Environmentalists will say, oh, well, we shouldn't be capturing the carbon. We shouldn't be having the carbon in the first place. But in the meantime, young people need jobs. We need to develop the skills. And places like Merseyside and Teesside do need to reindustrialise. And so that's what this is all about, is moving the economy forward now, not waiting 20 years.
Well, you think they'd start from the beginning, though, rather than at the end where they'd like to be and then start working their way up? You have to build all these things before you then put a load of people out of work for this supposed industry that doesn't quite exist yet, for steel that you're still going to have to buy from China and still import oil and gas because you've got rid of all your own reserves, so you're not using your own reserves, so you're not going to... I mean, surely you should use things that you have anyway and deplete those whilst you're working out how to create the new energies. But let's quickly move on to the Chagos Islands, because a lot of people think that has now become sort of like that's lit the match for other places to now leave the British sort of empire, as it were. I mean, obviously we're not an empire now, but do you know what I mean?
I don't believe for 1 second this jeopardises the status of the Falklands or Gibraltar or the other overseas territories. It's a specific deal done as a result of a legal action, and actually safeguards the US base on the Chagos, which is in our strategic interests as well. But I mean, I would resign from the Labour Party now if I felt for a minute this was in any way a thin end of a wedge of getting rid of the Falklands or Gibraltar, and the Falklands in particular, where British blood has been shed. And, they want to be British, and they are British, and they will stay British. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of scaremongering going on with the Chagos Islands issue, really? Because it does not impact at all our position on the Falklands, Gibraltar and elsewhere.
But the Argentinians are now saying that they are going to continue now until they get the island back, having seen...
Well, they've been saying that for 40 years, haven't they? And they can go whistle. We've been very clear on this.
But it had gone quiet. We'd kind of moved on, but now this has reignited it, and everybody's feeling a bit nervous about that. Not only that, but they didn't ask the Chagos people, so the Chagosians, they didn't ask them what they would like to happen, because surely that was the problem in the first place. They took something without asking, and now they should ask.
I mean, I think that's fair, actually. I heard Peter Lamb, who is the Labour MP, who represents an area where lots of the Chagosians live in the UK now, and he was saying they hadn't been consulted. There was a sort of rather hasty phone call trying to be put through. So, I mean, I think that's a shame. I think they should have been part of the discussion.
Of course.
I mean, not all the Chagosians do want to go back, of course. Many of them quite like living in Crawley and have settled down, and they've been here a long time now. So it's not, they're not an entirely displaced people. Some of them are very happy where they are. But yes, they should have been consulted. I think that's only reasonable, actually.
Yeah. All right. Listen, Paul, really good to talk to you. That's the former Labour Special Advisor.
Thank you.
Paul Richards. Excellent, excellent.